Pay attention to the two young women in this CCTV footage. On the left is 23-year-old Madison, and on the right is 22-year-old Emma, walking out of a fun night out in Mexico, celebrating their college graduation. Now they're outside waiting for their driver to bring them back to their hotel. However, what they don't know is that a truck full of Mexican cartel members is just blocks away. They saw them on this very CCTV in real time, and they're about to bring the celebration to an abrupt and violent end. Moments later, a truck drives suspiciously close to the girls, who probably thinks it's just their driver. However, the car doors open and armed cartel members storm out and force the girls inside their car as they speed off into the night. This was the last footage ever seen of Madison and Emma. 2:47 a.m., March 19th, 2023. Karen Clark's phone vibrates on her nightstand. She's half asleep, expecting a late-night text from her daughter Madison. Instead, she finds 17 missed calls from an unknown Mexican number. What she hears next will haunt her forever. The voicemail is brief. The voice is cold. Broken English with a thick Spanish accent delivers a message no mother should ever hear. "We have your daughter and her friend. Do not contact police. Wait for instructions." Karen plays it again. Then again. Her hands are shaking. She tries to convince herself it's a prank, some sick joke. But deep in her gut, she knows it's real. Madison, 23, had just graduated from Arizona State University with her nursing degree. She told her mother she was celebrating in Tucson for the weekend. She never mentioned Mexico. Karen calls Madison's cell, straight to voicemail. She tries Emma's number, same thing. By 3:15 a.m., Karen's sitting at her kitchen table in Scottsdale, staring at her phone, paralyzed. The voice had been clear. Do not contact police. But every instinct tells her that waiting is the wrong choice. It was Emma's idea to celebrate in Mexico. Looking back, it was a catastrophically reckless decision. Madison Clark and Emma Rodriguez had been best friends since freshman orientation at Arizona State University. They met in a packed auditorium during Welcome Week, both nervous freshmen trying to navigate college life. Madison earned her Bachelor of Science in Nursing, a grueling program that demanded countless hours in labs, hospitals, and study sessions. Emma, 22, finished her psychology degree, focusing on trauma counseling and mental health advocacy. After 4 years of brutal coursework, clinical rotations, endless all-nighters, and supporting each other through every challenge, they felt they'd earned a real celebration. Their graduation day had been filled with joy. Both families gathered at Sun Devil Stadium, proud parents snapping photos as their daughters walked across the stage. Madison's mother, Karen, remembered her daughter's huge smile as she received her nursing diploma. Sophia Rodriguez recalled Emma's tears of happiness, overcome with emotion at finishing a journey she'd once thought impossible. Emma had seen the Instagram posts, other recent graduates partying in Mexican beach towns and clubs just across the border. The photos looked exciting, the drinks looked cheap. The adventure seemed irresistible. She pitched the idea to Madison over coffee at their favorite campus spot, arguing it would be the perfect way to close out their college chapter before adult responsibilities took over. Madison hesitated at first. Her mother had always warned her about the dangers south of the border, especially for young American women traveling alone. Karen had shared news stories, cautioned about cartel violence, and urged Madison to stick to safer destinations. But Emma was persuasive. She pointed out that thousands of college students crossed into Mexico without incident every weekend. Nogales was a border town with plenty of American tourists. They'd be careful. Stay in tourist areas, hire drivers, avoid anything sketchy. Be back by Sunday night. They were graduated now, adults in their 20s with college degrees. They'd survived organic chemistry, 12-hour hospital shifts, and comprehensive exams. What could possibly go wrong? Friday evening, March 17th, the two women crossed the border into Nogales, Sonora, on foot through the pedestrian gate. American citizens leaving the U.S. face virtually no screening. The Mexican side waved them through after a quick glance at their passports. The ease of crossing reinforced their sense that this trip was safe and simple. They checked into a modest hotel on the Mexican side. a small place recommended on travel forums for budget-conscious young tourists. The room was basic but clean. They dropped their bags, freshened up, and ventured out to explore the area. Friday night was low-key. They grabbed dinner at a local restaurant, walked through the downtown area, and returned to their hotel early to rest up for Saturday night. Saturday was their big night out. They spent the afternoon exploring local shops and markets, posting photos to their social media accounts. Friends back home commented, asking if they were staying safe. Madison assured everyone they were being careful and sticking to tourist areas. They'd heard about a popular club called Fuego from other travelers at their hotel. It supposedly catered to young tourists and locals alike, with a mix of American and Mexican music, reasonable drink prices, and a fun atmosphere. Several other American college students they met at the hotel were planning to go, which made them feel more comfortable about the choice. Saturday night, dressed in their best going-out clothes, they took a taxi to the club around 10 p.m. The music was loud, the drinks were strong and cheap. The atmosphere was still electric. They danced, met other travelers, took photos, and posted updates to their Instagram stories, showing them having the time of their lives. Madison sent her mom a quick text around 11 p.m. "Having fun, all good, love you." It would be the last message Karen would receive from her daughter. What they didn't know was that they were being watched, not by club security, by halcones, cartel lookouts who monitored venues like Fuego specifically for vulnerable targets. Madison and Emma, two young American women without male companions or local guides, fit the profile perfectly. The men monitoring the club weren't random criminals. They were part of a cell operating under a Mexican cartel, specifically tasked with identifying and acquiring targets for various criminal enterprises. Nogales sits in a strategic corridor for drug trafficking and human smuggling, directly on the Arizona-Mexico border. The cartel maintains sophisticated surveillance operations on nightlife venues frequented by tourists. They employ lookouts, halcones in cartel terminology, who blend into crowds at clubs, bars, and restaurants. These spotters identify vulnerable individuals and relay information to coordinators who make targeting decisions. The criteria are specific: young tourists who appear intoxicated, Americans traveling without security or male companions, young women in small groups who seem unfamiliar with the area. Wealth indicators matter too: nice phones, designer bags, jewelry that suggests families back home might have money for ransom payments. Madison and Emma had been flagged within their first hour at the club. They were clearly American, spoke English loudly over the music, took numerous photos suggesting social media presence, and traveled alone without male protection. To the halcones watching them, they were ideal targets. The decision to target them was made by a coordinator via encrypted messaging apps that cartels use to avoid law enforcement monitoring. A crew was dispatched with specific instructions: wait until the women leave the club, follow them to confirm they're alone, and take them when the opportunity presents itself. The crew received photos of the targets from the halcones' phones to ensure they grabbed the right women. The crew was experienced, they were efficient. They had done this many times before. In Nogales alone, dozens of kidnappings occur each year, though most never make international news. American victims are particularly valuable because U.S. families typically have access to more money and are more likely to pay ransoms quickly. 1:47 a.m., Madison and Emma left Club Fuego. They were tired, slightly drunk, and ready to return to their hotel. Emma had arranged for a driver through a ride-sharing app commonly used in Nogales. They stood in the parking lot outside the club, checking their phones and waiting for their ride. Security camera footage from a store across the street captured what happened next. A dark pickup truck, a Chevrolet Silverado, pulled up in front of them. It looked similar to many of the vehicles used by informal taxi services in the area. Emma glanced at her phone, seeing a vehicle arrive at approximately the right time. The doors suddenly burst open, but instead of a solo driver, 4 men jumped out. Before the women could even look up from their phones or react, 2 of the men grabbed them. One seized Madison's arm and pulled her toward the truck. Another did the same to Emma. The abduction lasted less than 30 seconds. Both women were forced into the back of the truck, covered with a tarp, and the vehicle immediately sped away. The Silverado pulled away and disappeared down a side street, followed closely by a second vehicle, a black SUV that had been waiting nearby. The security camera captured the license plates of both vehicles. Those plates would later be revealed as stolen, registered to vehicles that had been reported missing weeks earlier. The abduction was over, but for Madison and Emma, the nightmare had just begun. The vehicles sped through the outskirts of Nogales and merged onto Mexican Federal Highway 15, heading south into the Sonoran Desert. Back in Scottsdale, Karen Clark made the decision that would ultimately save her daughter's life, or at least give her a chance. Despite the explicit warning in the voicemail, she called the Scottsdale Police Department at 4 a.m. The dispatcher initially treated it as a missing persons report, but when Karen played the voicemail recording over the phone, the case was immediately escalated. Within an hour, detectives from Scottsdale PD were at Karen's home. She provided them with Madison's phone number, Emma's contact information, and all the details she knew about the trip. She mentioned that Emma's mother, Sofia Rodriguez, also lived in the Phoenix area. Officers were dispatched to Sofia's home to inform her that her daughter was missing and likely in danger. By 6:00 a.m., both families were in contact with the FBI. The case fell under the jurisdiction of the FBI's Phoenix Field Office due to the international nature of the crime and the potential involvement of organized crime. The FBI's International Operations Division and the Bureau's relationship with Mexican authorities would be critical in the hours ahead. Special Agent Laura Mendez was assigned as the lead investigator. Mendez, a veteran agent with extensive experience in cross-border abductions and cartel activity, immediately recognized the seriousness of the situation. She had worked dozens of similar cases over her 15-year career. Some had ended with victims safely returned. Too many had not. She explained to both families that the first 24 to 48 hours were the most critical. The cartel would likely make contact again with ransom demands. In the meantime, the FBI would coordinate with Mexican federal authorities and the U.S. consulate in Hermosillo to begin a search. The FBI's attaché in Mexico City was immediately contacted. The legal attaché office, known as the Legat, serves as the FBI's liaison with Mexican law enforcement. Within hours, they had connected with Mexico's Agencia de Investigación Criminal and the country's anti-kidnapping unit, specialized units that handle these exact types of cases. But coordination between U.S. and Mexican authorities is complicated. Jurisdictional issues, language barriers, different legal systems, and varying levels of corruption within Mexican law enforcement can slow down investigations. Some Mexican police units are compromised by cartel infiltration. The FBI has to be extremely careful about which Mexican authorities receive sensitive information. Mendez also made a difficult but necessary point to the families. Paying a ransom did not guarantee the women's safe return. Cartel abductions often resulted in victims being held even after payment, moved to secondary locations for other criminal purposes, or killed regardless of whether families cooperated. Statistics on kidnapping cases in Mexico show that even when ransoms are paid in full, victim survival rates are disturbingly low. However, refusing to engage or delaying payment could provoke immediate violence. Cartels often kill hostages to send messages or simply because keeping them alive becomes inconvenient. The families were caught in an impossible dilemma: pay and hope the cartel honors their word, or refuse and almost certainly guarantee their daughters' deaths. 9:22 a.m., Saturday morning. The same unknown Mexican number that had called Karen Clark the night before now called Sofia Rodriguez. This time, the caller's message was longer, more detailed. He identified himself only as a representative of a group that had the two American girls. He stated that both women were alive and unharmed, but would remain so only if their families cooperated. The demand was clear: $250,000 per person, for a total of $500,000, to be paid in Bitcoin within 72 hours. Instructions for the transfer would follow. If the families contacted law enforcement or attempted to delay payment, the women would be killed. The call was recorded by the FBI, who had placed monitoring equipment on Sofia's phone. The voice on the recording was male, spoke fluent English with a Mexican accent, and displayed no emotion. He did not allow Sofia to ask questions or make requests to speak with her daughter. The call lasted 1 minute and 37 seconds before the line went dead. Agent Mendez and her team analyzed the recording immediately. The demand for Bitcoin was significant. It indicated a level of sophistication and an understanding of how to move money without detection. The 72-hour deadline was designed to create panic and prevent the families from organizing a coordinated response. The FBI faced a difficult strategic decision. They could advise the families not to pay, using the time to coordinate with Mexican authorities to locate the women through investigation. Or they could support a ransom payment in hopes of securing the women's release, knowing that payment often emboldened cartels and funded future criminal activity. Mendez recommended a middle path. The families would prepare to pay, buying time and keeping the cartel engaged, while the FBI and Mexican federal police worked frantically to locate the women before the 72-hour deadline expired. According to the subsequent investigation, Madison and Emma were being held in a rural compound approximately 90 miles south of Nogales, near the town of Magdalena de Quino. The compound was a fortified ranch-style property surrounded by high walls, security cameras, and armed guards. It was one of several safe houses operated by a mid-level cartel cell that specialized in kidnapping, extortion, and human smuggling. On the second day of their captivity, a proof-of-life video was recorded. Madison appeared on camera and said, "Mom, I'm okay. Emma's okay. Please do what they ask. We just want to come home." That video was sent to Karen Clark's phone later that evening, along with a follow-up message reiterating the ransom demand and the 72-hour deadline. While the families agonized over how to raise $500,000, the FBI and Mexican authorities were making progress. The security footage from outside Club Fuego had been obtained within hours of the abduction and shared with Mexican federal police. The video quality was decent enough for analysis. Facial recognition software was run against databases of known cartel operatives in the Sonora region. 2 of the 4 men involved in the kidnapping were identified. Both were known cartel operatives with prior arrest records for drug trafficking, extortion, and weapons charges. One had been arrested 3 times but never served significant prison time due to corruption and witness intimidation. More importantly, Mexican intelligence agencies had intercepted cell phone communications in the Nogales area that mentioned the abduction of 2 American women. Mexico's intelligence services monitor known cartel phone numbers and encrypted messaging apps, though cartels frequently change phones and use sophisticated encryption. These particular intercepts came from mid-level cartel members who had been sloppy with operational security. The intercepts didn't provide a precise location, but they confirmed the women were being held south of Nogales and were intended for ransom rather than trafficking. This was actually positive news in a grim situation. It meant the cartel viewed them as valuable assets worth keeping alive temporarily. Mexican federal police, working in coordination with the FBI, began surveilling known cartel safe houses in the Magdalena de Quino region based on the intelligence gathered. They used satellite imagery, drone surveillance, and physical observation teams positioned at a distance. One property, a fortified ranch compound, was flagged as a high-probability location due to increased vehicle activity, the presence of armed guards, and several vehicles matching descriptions from the abduction being spotted on the property. Intelligence analysts also tracked the stolen license plates. The plates had been taken from vehicles in separate incidents weeks earlier, a common cartel tactic to avoid identification. But tracking where those plates had been spotted by traffic cameras and police checkpoints helped narrow down the search area. On the morning of Monday, March 20th, just hours before the 72-hour ransom deadline was set to expire, a tactical decision was made. Rather than wait for the ransom exchange, which could take place anywhere and might not result in the women's release, Mexican federal police would raid the compound. The raid was carried out by the Agencia de Investigación Criminal, Mexico's federal investigative police, with support from the Mexican Navy's Special Forces Unit. 11:47 a.m., approximately 30 heavily armed officers surrounded the compound. They used a battering ram to breach the front gate and entered with flashbang grenades to disorient the guards inside. The element of surprise was total. 3 cartel members were apprehended in the main house without resistance. A fourth man, armed with an AK-47, attempted to flee through a back door and was shot and wounded by federal police. He survived and was taken into custody. Inside the compound, officers found the concrete room where Madison Clark and Emma Rodriguez had been held. The door was padlocked from the outside. When officers broke through, they discovered both women inside. They had been executed with gunshots to the head. According to the subsequent investigation, the women had been killed before the raid took place. The cartel had made good on their threat. The bodies of Madison Clark and Emma Rodriguez were transported to the U.S. consulate in Hermosillo and then returned to their families in Arizona. The repatriation process took several days as Mexican authorities completed their forensic investigation and processed the necessary documentation. The news of their deaths sent shockwaves through the Phoenix community and made national headlines. The tragic case became a stark reminder of the dangers faced by young Americans who underestimate the risks of travel in cartel-controlled regions of Mexico. Local news stations ran special reports. National media picked up the story. Politicians issued statements about border security. The four men arrested at the compound were charged under Mexican federal law with kidnapping, murder, organized crime activity, and weapons violations. Mexican prosecutors built their case using evidence from the raid, the security footage, phone intercepts, and forensic evidence from the crime scene. Two of them were later extradited to the United States to face additional federal charges under laws that allow prosecution of crimes against U.S. citizens abroad. During interrogations, one of the cartel members admitted that the women had been killed when the families failed to produce the ransom money within the deadline. He showed no remorse, stating coldly that this was standard procedure for their operation. When asked why they didn't wait longer or negotiate, he explained that keeping hostages alive past deadlines created operational risks and sent the wrong message to future targets. The cartel's business model relied on fear and certainty. If you don't pay on time, you die. The investigation revealed that the cell responsible for the murders had been operating for over 3 years and was suspected of involvement in at least 8 other kidnappings in the Nogales region. 4 cases involved victims who were never found, likely killed and buried in the desert. 2 cases ended with ransom payments and victim releases. 2 others, including Madison and Emma's case, ended in murder. For Karen Clark and Sofia Rodriguez, the loss of their daughters was devastating and permanent. Both mothers struggled with profound grief, survivor's guilt, and anger at the circumstances that led to the tragedy. In the months following the murders, they became vocal advocates for increased awareness about the dangers of cartel activity along the U.S.-Mexico border. They worked with the FBI and State Department to create educational materials distributed to college students in border states, warning them about the specific tactics cartels use to target young Americans. Their message was clear and uncompromising. Mexico is not safe for casual tourism, especially in border regions controlled by organized crime. Karen Clark established the Madison Clark Memorial Foundation, which provides scholarships to nursing students and funds cross-border safety education programs. Sofia Rodriguez became a frequent speaker at universities, sharing Emma's story and urging students to make informed decisions about travel. Both women channeled their grief into action, determined that their daughters' deaths would not be meaningless. The case had broader implications for U.S.-Mexico relations and border security. The State Department issued stronger travel warnings for Americans visiting northern Mexico, and several universities implemented mandatory safety briefings for students planning trips across the border. The compound where Madison and Emma were killed was dismantled, but dozens of similar safe houses continue to operate throughout northern Mexico, and kidnappings of Americans, while relatively rare, remain a persistent threat. The brutal reality is that the cartels operate with near impunity in many regions, and young Americans who venture into these areas without understanding the risks are gambling with their lives. Karen Clark keeps a photograph on her mantle, taken the day before Madison left for Mexico. In it, Madison is smiling in her ASU nursing school graduation gown, full of hope and dreams for her future. She was 23 years old, a newly licensed nurse with her entire life ahead of her. Emma Rodriguez was 22, a bright and ambitious young woman who had just earned her psychology degree and planned to pursue a master's program. Both women died in a concrete room in the Mexican desert, victims of a criminal enterprise that views human life as nothing more than a commodity. 4 years after the murders, both families continue to grieve. There is no closure, no healing, only the permanent absence of two young women who made one catastrophic decision and paid for it with their lives. The last footage of Madison and Emma, captured on that security camera outside Club Fuego, shows them laughing and checking their phones, completely unaware of the horror that awaited them. It was the last time anyone would see them alive.